I would like to start off by thanking you all very much for coming. It means a lot to see interest in what we're doing. I think it's important. This area of standards and ambient IoT has the impact to make a meaningful difference in our lives and to change things for the better, and there's also some tremendous business opportunities. So thanks for coming. Thanks to Patrick from PwC for joining me. We always like to have a partner in these sessions, and hopefully what you hear will inspire you to move forward. And if you need help when you move forward, then Patrick and his practice within PwC is qualified second to none. He'll talk about his background, but he and I have known each other, BW, before Wiliot, when he was a pioneer in the Bluetooth beacon ecosystem. So I want to do a quick bit of arm raising, get the blood flowing into your arms and help ground where everyone is in terms of familiarity with what we're going to be presenting on. So how many people have heard a Wiliot presentation before? Anyone? So a lot of people, that's great. Okay. So who remembers what it was like using the internet in the early days of dial-up? Did anyone use the internet? It wasn't great, but it was interesting and kind of promising. Who remembers life before the smartphone, when we had the feature phones with the small screens? Anyone? Okay. So that was pretty painful too, but again, exciting, lots of potential. I feel like the Internet of Things is kind of like those stages. So we all kind of get the idea of connecting things and assets to the internet, but it really has been deeply disappointing to me as an advocate to see how far we have come, given how much we could do and can do. And I really believe that what we're talking about today, Ambient IoT, is a manifestation and our best chance of going from the era of the feature phone with a promising device that was deeply frustrating and under-delivering to the smartphone, which ended up being so big it changed the way people lived their lives and created new business opportunities. So I really believe that Ambient IoT will be at least as disruptive as the smartphone has been when we connect every single thing, food, medicine, clothing, luggage, whatever, to the internet and open that portal between generative AI and the cloud and the physical world we live in, and move from just typing text into ChatGPT to opening up this to the cloud. So this is the order of ceremonies for today. I'm going to do a quick intro to Wiliot. Most of you probably don't know us too well. And focus on what is ambient IoT. Let's define this term that I've been throwing around for the last minute. I'm going to deliver on the promise to give you a standards update. So there's a bunch of stuff that's going on. We'll have time for Q&A if you want to drill in deeper. I spend a bunch of time collaborating with and talking to our representatives on 3GPP, BLE, the Bluetooth SIG, and IEEE. I'll give you a level set in terms of where we are with deploying ambient IoT in the real world. We've got about 700 plus customers, many of them very small, dozens of them Fortune 500 companies, and a handful of some of the very largest companies in the world that are deploying this, and it's changing things completely. It's really my life's dream, seeing this starting to unfold, seeing things that we've never seen before as we turn the lights on. Then I'm going to hand over to Patrick, so that will take us through probably about 35 minutes if I hit my mark. Then Patrick will talk for 9 minutes if he hits his mark. And then we're going to hand over to someone who's not in the room but has pre-recorded a message for us, our Anthony Yusefian, who's our VP of Climate and Circularity. And before I joined Wiliot, as well as being a Bluetooth beacon nerd, writer, podcaster, I worked on sustainability. So we see a direct correlation between this technology, people, planet, and of course profit. And then if we do it all properly, you'll have a chance to lob in ideas, and we can have more of a discussion, which Patrick and I are really looking forward to. So that's the plan. And to incentivize you to not do what the gentleman who was obviously sitting in the wrong room, who left like 30 seconds in, we're going to bribe you with best gift we could think of on the spur of the moment, which is actually a pretty heavy Bose smart speaker. I've got a bunch of these at home, they're amazing. And if you scan that QR code, enter your name, then Sierra, who's sitting patiently at the back, will pluck out a name, text it to me at the end. The key thing is you have to be here at the end to get it. So, who knows the majority shareholder of Bose? Anyone know who owns more? It is an academic institution, it's MIT. So when we buy this, we're supporting the MIT Media Lab and all the other things that they do. Okay, so some of you will not have heard of Wiliot. This is kind of us on a slide. We provide an IoT data carrier. It's a platform. We don't do apps. In fact, we try and get our partners to do as much as possible, whether it's making the tags, making the edge devices. We have a cloud service that is a data carrier, i.e. it's an alternative to barcodes, QR codes, RFID, but it's different, and we'll explain why it is different. We're modest size, 200 people. We've raised a bunch of money from some amazing investors, a lot of them in this space. So Verizon, NTT, Docomo, Qualcomm, SoftBank in the telco business, but also one of the largest online retailers, Amazon, PepsiCo. There's a lot. And we've been going for about 6 years. I joined a few months in, was the first person outside of the core R&D team. I went over to Israel, and they promised battery-free ARM processor, and it was just kind of a board and lots of wires. But then about 9 chips later, they're delivering this amazing thing, and this year we'll probably do about 150 million of these battery-free Bluetooth tags, which you can see a picture of one there. We'll go into the details of it later, but this is I can actually carry a whole archive of our products going back from the very earliest test chips in my wallet. But this is basically an ARM processor with RAM, ROM, flash memory, and battery-free energy harvesting. So that's what we do. So that is us in a slide, and we have people everywhere. Core R&D, Israel. We actually have a team that's doing amazing work in Kiev, in Ukraine, as well as Portugal and the UK, and we're dotted all around the US, Bay Area, San Diego, which is where I am. And our goal is to deliver on the original promise of the Internet of Things. So what we're doing has got quite a bit of attention. I'm biased, I run marketing, so I like to think that we're doing a good job, but we've been in the Wall Street Journal 3 times, and we're featured in this thing on, basically, to paraphrase a title from an Oscar-winning movie, basically everything, everywhere, all at once. And I think, as well as being an amazing movie, still trying to figure out what it means, but as well as being an amazing movie, it's a great way of thinking about ambient IoT. Everything, obviously not just the expensive things, everywhere speaks for itself, but all at once means because we're reading and seeing things with commodity radios that are also everywhere, our phones, our Wi-Fi access points, then we can see things all of the time, not just a snapshot. So what Ambient IoT is doing is really part of a long progression that started off with the mainframes. There were maybe a few thousand of those they cost millions of dollars. And then that gave way and was complemented by desktops. And so we went from thousands of mainframes to millions of desktops because they cost thousands of dollars. The smartphones went down to hundreds of dollars, so we got about 1 billion of those. And now, as we progress to these guys, which will be less than 10 cents at volume next year, then we're scaling to an addressable market of 10 trillion things that could be attached. If you look at all the clothes, medicine, and so forth, that has the potential to be wired. And all of these things are running over networks, and we've progressed from very proprietary ones to open wired networks, wireless networks, and ambient IoT. So to drill in a little more on this ambient term, then look to Merriam-Webster, and you get existing or present on all sides. Ambient IoT, this concept is that you'll have tags in the care label of your clothing. We've already, during the COVID pandemic, when we all thought we might not make it through the year, we started a project to integrate these things into vials of COVID vaccine. We were paid by one of the biggest makers of COVID vaccine to do that. And if you visit our booth, you'll see one of those early vaccine vials. And it was a brilliant technical success. So that tag enabled us to measure, it survived cryogenic freezing, so minus 80 degrees C, because it's battery free. It came out the other end functioning and measuring the temperature and the dilution and the fill level of these vaccine vials. And unfortunately, the FDA didn't know this was possible. It wasn't actually deployed, even though it worked. And who knows how many people got inoculated with vaccine that was inert because it had been kept at room temperature for too long. But it doesn't have to be that way. And in the perfect world of ambient IoT, we get that visibility of medicine. We know whether our family is taking their meds and whether the cold chain has been maintained. We believe that for things to really be ambient, it can't rely on human beings doing something. It can't rely on consumers or employees. So this is a push technology. This is an active radio. And so you will start to see signals whether you scan something or not on your phone. And then lastly, and this is super important, and if I air a bit of the inside baseball from what's happening in 3GPP, the body that defines ambient IoT as far as the future 5G and 6G standards go, then the debate, one of the debates is how low is low cost. We believe that low cost really should be single-digit pennies. If it's anything more than that, then you've got the Internet of expensive things all over again. If we're really going to get visibility for food, clothing, and the things that can make a dramatic increase, not just a little improvement in supply chain efficiency, but huge strides forward that will enable reduction in cost and carbon, then it has to be super low cost. And we're seeing that it's possible with this technology. So we think ambient power is the best way to implement ambient IoT. No batteries, reduces the cost, extends the life. That's kind of our recipe. Not everyone agrees, but there seems to be general forward movement, which is good. There's also competition from other standards bodies. So a little bit more about what we mean in practical terms. So traditionally with barcodes, you had someone with an optical scanner, or maybe you had some robots or some fixed infrastructure, which tends to actually get pretty expensive, especially when you have servers in the back who are kind of understanding what has been seen, or you can have RFID, which we feel like we stand on the shoulders of that industry. And if anyone here is involved in RFID, job well done and amazing preparation for ambient IoT. This tag was made by one of the leading makers of RFID tags. In fact, almost every large RFID manufacturer is adjusting the settings on their equipment and preparing to, if not already producing millions of these tags using the same equipment. And we believe that we can streamline that production process and drive costs down even further. But essentially, this is a radio frequency identifier, and all of the expertise that went into understanding serialization and RF that makes RFID work is great foundation for making Ambient IoT work. But Ambient IoT is about end-to-end visibility from cradle to grave, and sometimes resurrection, reuse of products, because we know where they came from, we know what's in them, we know what the provenance is. The circular economy is something that Ambient IoT can enable, and there's plenty of devices around that are available to read these tags. If you think about the number of radios that are in your life, in the phone that you're carrying, in your earbuds, maybe in my case in your watch, in your television, your Wi-Fi access point, your car, your appliances, I mean, they're everywhere. So let's use those to, and even some examples here in the robots, the vacuum cleaners. All of these can be readers and can increase the visibility from a generational snapshot, which is what we have with, whenever there's a manual scanner, it becomes expensive to scan. And so what we get is a snapshot. But when we have everything, talking to everything, then we essentially get what we have with smartphones today, with social media. You basically crowdsource the visibility. And you can't get away from, I can't do anything embarrassing here, because someone will pick out their smartphone and it will be out on, well, given how old we are, all are, it will probably be on Facebook, but it could be on some other social network, which I don't understand. But anyway, so we take that crowdsourcing and then we apply it to auto-identification. We have a very powerful tool. So just to nail this, what is the difference between Ambient IoT and RFID? There are many things. RFID was born a couple of decades ago. Ambient IoT was born with the cloud in mind. We can start to take things that were done on the chip, add them to the cloud. We have infinite space for metadata. We can reassign and correct and change. Basically, this is real time because the visibility is much, much more pervasive. It's not just when someone decides they're going to wave a scanner. And all of these are temperature sensors. So you can do that with RFID, but it's the exception. The rule is expensive. Every single Ambient IoT pixel has a temperature sensor, and we just announced, and if you again come to our booth, you can see humidity sensing version. It's secure. So if everyone can read an Ambient IoT tag, then not everyone can read an RFID tag. How many people bought an RFID reader with them? But you all bought a Bluetooth scanner in the shape of your phone. So then security becomes important. So each of these tags has encryption keys, AES 128, end-to-end encryption between the tag and the cloud, which means we have accountability and ownership. We can use existing infrastructure, which really reduces the cost. And essentially, the difference between the old IoT and the new IoT is all about cost. Cost of tags, in the case of big, expensive tags, cost of infrastructure, and cost of scanning. If we eliminate all three of those costs, that's when we become ambient. So how do we start to inspect and see this wonderful information? Well, here's a demo. It's a project. We're open sourcing it. It's called Living Web. And you can see, you can come and see this in our booth. It's an iOS app. We're going to make it available on the App Store. Basically what you do is you pair an ID from a tag with a place or a thing. And essentially what we have is a browser for the physical world. So the metaphor is augmented reality. Every time we see a signal from a tag, then we project on that little wavelet. So that's not just sort of a demo-y thing. That tells us that we're getting a change in data that is interesting. In this case, a temperature event. And then the remembering bit of hear, see, and remember is the location history and the temperature history. So we're opening this up, making it generalizable, and we'll open this up to other people's Bluetooth beacons. So if you want to use a $20 Estimo beacon. They're a lot more attractive than these, I can tell you that. You'll be able to use that with this same browser. And it's using Unity, which means it'll work with the AR glasses coming from Apple and many other vendors. So what does this mean for the people here, for the telco industry? So at the moment, this is all about Bluetooth. There is activity around in 3GPP. There's a large number of people who've been working on Ambient IoT for release 19 of 5G Advanced. So what does that mean? Well, it means huge value creation. We have the opportunity to solve big problems. I'll open that up a bit more, but supply chain disruption, climate, sustainability, many things that we can solve. So what better industry than this one to capitalize on that? By its nature, this represents opportunities for recurring revenue. Our model is to just charge people a few pennies per asset based on the value that's being created. And what we hope is people will build applications on this. And carriers are very familiar with recurring revenue streams. And so rather than making arguments about 5G, low latency, it's going to change the world, we really believe that connecting food, medicine, and clothing will change the world. And we think that this industry, which has some of the biggest technology companies, equipment makers, handset makers, service providers, has a huge amount to gain from this and is a great fit. The level of sophistication of people in this industry is way above in terms of the technology and what's required to make this work. It's a hand-in-glove fit, and so we have the prospect of going from 1 or 2 connections per user to hundreds, if not thousands, of connections. So those are big numbers that should make any board member or any shareholder really happy. Okay, so I've talked a bit about standards. Let's get into it. The standard we use today is Bluetooth, the Bluetooth SIG. Are kind of looking at what's happening in 3GPP and IEEE, and they're saying, okay, well maybe we need to respond to this, but they already have a transport mechanism to get signals from here to the phone, and it works today. No change is necessary. But there's other things they could do around frequencies for energizing and management of the edge. And they're very bullish on Ambient IoT, so they're echoing these projections of an addressable market of 10 trillion units, which is hundreds of times bigger than the Internet of Things is at the moment. But 3GPP has been active. There's work going on in a number of working groups, and all of that work starts with use cases. And we're lucky, fortunate I should say, in that we have real use cases based on real customers that we can contribute to that. So we contributed details of some work that we were doing around reusable packaging and containers. But some of the most familiar names to all of us in this business have been contributing Find My style use cases, not just find my phone, but find my absolutely everything. Some of the biggest infrastructure companies have been contributing as well. So what's the timeline for all this work? Here's the best case theoretical timeline for release 19. Release 19 will have a whole basket of features, and Ambient IoT is likely to be in that. There's been a bunch of votes, and it seems like Ambient IoT is well above the threshold for inclusion. End of 2025 is when you can expect that. Now, our commitment as a company is to have pre-standards support. As we see the way it's going, we feel like we're in a good position. So that's an argument for being more optimistic about when usable technology will be available. But in all likelihood, this timeline will push out. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on that likely means that this official timeline for when the standard is ratified will move out. And then, of course, there's a whole ecosystem of equipment manufacturers. The date when we'll have a Pico cell that will talk Ambient IoT is probably going to be 1 year after whenever the standard is done. So So why do it though? I mean, this works today with Bluetooth, so why bother create a whole new thing? I think there's lots of reasons why the telco industry has a huge amount to gain. We've already talked about that, but also to offer. And one of the biggest things is the network. Think about some of these ambient IoT use cases. If you start tracking products at the point they're made, distributed, sold, used, and recycled, no one company, no one venue owner owns all of that. You're roaming from one place to the other. There's probably going to be infrastructure that is owned by different players. Whoever owns the smart speakers in your phone may not be the entity that owns the infrastructure in a factory or in a store. So what are we going to do? Are we all going to put Bluetooth infrastructure throughout every stage and have many, many receivers and readers? No, that probably doesn't make sense. So we need to have some sharing done. And there's a certain amount that Wiliot, as a player in this, can do to facilitate that. But to really have robust, scalable sharing of data, roaming agreements, billing agreements, that's something that telcos understand better than any other entity in this business. So if we're going to avoid a situation where the company that owns the most appliances in your home is the one that owns the home and is reading the signals from your cornflakes packet to say that it's empty and you'd like a replacement, if we want everyone to be able to compete, then really we need the telco industry to agree on how to implement the exchange of data so that anyone can get access and we can have a really big ecosystem of providers to services to the smart pantry, the smart refrigerator, the smart medicine cabinet, the smart drinks cabinet. So hopefully that gives you at least some perspective on where 3GPP fits relative to Bluetooth. But there's activity going on in Wi-Fi as well. So there's something called 802.11 AMP, which stands for ambient power. And that's progressing pretty well. So we've, again, been contributing, we've done demos, and why are we doing this? Well, we believe that if we take things as they are, then this industry with just Wiliot providing solutions can grow to small hundreds of billions of units. But to get to trillions, it's really going to take a big ecosystem. And what we want to do is see the AT&Ts and the Ciscos and the Apples and the Nokias and the Samsungs all joining in. And so I think what we'll find is different standards have different strengths, and certainly in terms of tag cost, it's probably going to be Bluetooth that wins that battle. In terms of spectrum that is pre-allocated quality of service, then 3GPP and 5G and 6G have the upper hand. And you can see the other dimensions in terms of outdoor coverage. It's pretty obvious who has the strength there, security and an ecosystem. One of the other things that carriers can offer is 611, someone to call. We all know who we get our services from. And if you decide, look, I don't want you knowing that I've put on a few pounds and my smart clothing doesn't fit me anymore, but I do want my medicine in my family to be monitored so that I can make sure everyone is taking what they need to be healthy, then how do you opt in and opt out? How do you manage the privacy? And telcos definitely have a role to play there as well. So this is hopefully gives you a framework of what we mean by ambient IoT, and at least an intro to what's happening in the standards and where this may go in the future. What's happening today? So I want to go back and I want to kind of recap. I've got a 2-minute video. I love it apart from the fact that I'm in it and I do a terrible job. So if you see me cringing, you'll understand why.
A tech startup tracking thousands of products across the supply chain in an effort to reduce waste. The company uses Bluetooth technology to monitor foods, medical supplies, and other items with limited shelf life. And businesses are signing up to manage their inventories and cut their carbon footprints. CBC senior climate correspondent Diana Olick with us now, continuing her series on climate startups. Diana, how does this work?
Well, Shep, you may have heard of the Internet of Things, IoT. It means items that are embedded with sensors or software. And in the case of a startup called Wiliot, it's tiny tags attached to food, medicine, and other items that track every aspect of their lifespans in order to reduce waste.
It's this ability to drive a very lean supply chain with only just the right amount of products that are in the right place at the right time, which we think is one of the keys to solving climate change.
They do it with these stamp-sized computers powered by Bluetooth and attached to any product or packaging, from vaccines.
It allows us to measure the temperature, the location, the authenticity.
To zucchinis.
Each zucchini that goes into a crate joins a unique monitoring path.
Smart crates monitoring everything moving from farm to fork. Wiliot is working with label giant Avery Dennison, which is manufacturing millions of these tags and connecting them to the cloud so they can be tracked anywhere, anytime.
By knowing where a product is, what's happening to it, where it's from, you can act faster. And so it's about taking data and turning it into actionable insights.
Insights that ultimately work to decrease waste by monitoring delays and shelf life. Wiliot is seeing massive demand as the makers of just about everything strive to reduce their carbon footprints.
Last quarter we quadrupled our revenue, and I expect when we leave this year then that growth will be on an even steeper trajectory.
Statler says clients include some of the largest pharmaceutical, apparel, and grocery companies. Backers so far: Avery Dennison, Verizon Ventures, Amazon, PepsiCo, Samsung, and SoftBank. Total funding, $270 million. And not only can this technology reduce waste, but it also enables companies to quantify far more accurately their carbon footprints from the point of manufacturing to consumption. That'll be really helpful for corporations as new regulations on emissions are clearly coming. Shep?
Diana, thanks very much.
Okay, so IoT Pixels, this is our version of an Ambient IoT tag, and you can see the data and you'll be able to access these slides later, so I'm not going to dwell on this. How does this actually work? And we could spend half an hour on it. I'm not going to go into the details, but basically the key to breaking through and getting a compute device with an ARM processor to be this small is capturing very weak signals, retaining the energy, and then splitting up the tasks of what needs to be done into small bite-sized chunks. So waves of energy come in, and we do the first bit of activity. We save the results in some retention memory. Another wave of energy comes in, and we proceed. So that takes typically 10 steps from when we start to when we broadcast a Bluetooth beacon, and that whole process happens several times a second. So this is a key slide in getting your head around, well, what does this look like? If I want to deploy this to tomorrow, what does it look like? Well, you put tags on assets, and you have a gateway, which is basically going from Bluetooth to a wide area network. And in between the tag and the gateway, you've got little stepping stones, bridge devices that could be a phone, but more likely it's one of these low-cost devices. And there's maybe half a dozen companies today that are making them, and a lot more on the way. And they do a few things. They listen to and hear the tags, and they filter what is a whole stream, a tsunami of data, and then they replay to the bridges, the gateways rather, which might be a Wi-Fi access point that's up in the ceiling. This goes to the cloud, which is where we orchestrate the whole thing, and then we talk to mobile applications. So that is the architecture of the solution. What does real-time visibility look like? This is data from one of our grocery customers, and this shows actually seeing something that's very dysfunctional that may not have been visible before. What happens when you order some more detergent and the detergent goes to the wrong store? Well, it turns out it then becomes really difficult to find a place for it, and so your staff end up moving the detergent all over the place. So this is the kind of visibility of regular products that you just couldn't see before, and more usefully, if you're in a purchasing app and you want to find the thing, then this is the kind of data that will give you that information. So there's many applications, hundreds, thousands. As a company, what we sell is this visibility platform, and the applications we're focused on are inventory accuracy that enables omnichannel performance, allows retailers and grocers to streamline the work that their staff do and make sure that when you buy online you find what you're looking for. We're very focused on food safety. There's some regulations that are driving that. If you know where things are, then you can start to calculate the carbon footprint, not at a company level, but at an individual product level. You'll hear more from Anthony on that. And then lastly, the thing that's in the future is understanding how people are using products and having auto-replenishment. That's the next frontier once we've done our work in the earlier stages of the supply chain. This technology is broadly applicable across a wide range of industries, and we have customers in all of these. So now, I'm going to hand over to Patrick.
Hello everybody, I'm Patrick Brody. Thank you so much, Stephen, for having me here. I've been tracking, so to speak, Wiliot now for 5 years. It was a big promise, to your point, and it's just amazing to see the progress that the company and you have made with this team, because I think it's revolutionary technology that's going to change the world. How many people in the room are familiar with PwC? So you probably know us as an audit firm, an accounting firm, maybe even a consulting firm. So I'm not either one of those. I actually work in a team called Connected Solutions, and we actually solve problems for our clients leveraging existing technology, in particular things like we're talking about here with Ambient IoT and Wiliot. My background has been in the wireless industry for about 30 years, ranging from startups. I worked on putting video on a phone. Believe it or not, people didn't think that we'd ever see video on a phone. Company in San Diego that got acquired by Alcatel. I got Alcatized, which is now a verb. It was particularly painful, but I'm French, so I can say that. And then sort of evolved into the different areas that mobility has brought to us in different industries. I worked in mobile entertainment. I have Wiliot here as an old friend, working with the MEF. It used to be called the Mobile Entertainment Forum before it became the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Was chairman of that for several years. Was on the board of Shazam, so to talk about ambient, right? Listening to music on your phone. I think the beauty of our industry is that the things that have happened on the edge, and again, this is very much an edge technology that relates to the broader ecosystem of the carriers and what they do with Spectrum, is where you innovate by essentially leveraging things that aren't necessarily tied or designed for one particular thing for something completely different. To me, that's the definition of innovation, and that's what you're doing with Bluetooth, which originally was tied to tethering things together, right? Your headset, your car, your speakers, whereas it can be used as a pure detection. And so those are the areas that I've been spending most of my career. I actually started a company called Wireless Registry in Washington about 8 years ago, actually 10 years ago now. This is when I met, by the way, this is Mr. Beacon. He's very humble, but he's known in the Bluetooth industry as Mr. Beacon. And that's when we first connected. And the idea was, to associate this notion of detection without connection, right? We're surrounded in this room. Each one of us are probably detecting the same sort of sequence of SSIDs and MAC IDs that are tied to not only the Wiliot tags that are in this room that Sierra and Steve have, but also the headsets and the microphones. Everything is emitting a signal. And the fact that we're all in the same room could be authenticating by the detection of the combination of those signals. And that's what sort of the startup Wireless Registry became. It then became something called Signal Frame. And then fast forward to how I ended up at PwC. We were in a meeting with a very large hospitality company talking about how you could put a piece of code in an app and you can collect all this data about signals that are around users of the app, again in detection mode, and you could learn a lot of information about attribute your audiences and create campaigns. And in that meeting, the particular folks from this actually probably the largest hotel chain in the world, which will remain unnamed, said, well, what we really need is we need a panic button for our housekeepers because 70% of our housekeepers are being sexually harassed on the job, which is an industry story that nobody wants to talk about. Unions started getting together, in particular places like Chicago. And so we kind of, with PwC at the time, because I actually brought PwC at this meeting, because it's hard, when you're a startup, it's hard to get those big meetings, right? So I had friends working at PwC. We said, we're a startup, we have big ideas. And then we actually deployed, and have been now for 6 years, an indoor geolocation platform that follows some of the fundamentals that you're talking about around this notion of detection without connection. And we are actually deployed in over 200 properties. So in fact, everyone but one big casino on the Strip is using our technology. And nobody knows that PwC does this. We're not, we don't tout it out, but it is the industry standard for what's called a rapid response button for housekeepers. So we've been deploying this, we've been managing this as part of PwC because we solve problems for our clients. So this is what my team does relative to the rest of the organization, which does a lot of really good PowerPoints. I'm not really good at PowerPoints, but we orchestrate. I have a lab in Washington where I've been testing his tags now for 5 years. We did a great demo using a robot connected to a private 5G that was scanning and energizing a Wiliot wall, which we've had in our facility now for a long time. And really it's orchestrating these solutions to solve problems for our clients. So this is just one problem that we solve for our client, and this represents the spaces that we've developed, and as a result we've been heavily into the IoT business, and we're particularly interested in understanding how our clients generate revenue or at least reduce their costs. And we talk a lot about FSMA and compliance for food safety. Obviously this is an area that PwC spends a lot of time and a lot of energy in with our clients to help them reduce their risks as it relates to particularly things like food safety, safety of employees, which is what we're doing with the rapid response button, but also compliance, right? There's new ESG regulation, in particular in California, obviously in Europe, around everything that's tied to our sustainability and the carbon footprint that we're emitting. So what we're doing with my team is figuring out how do we solve problems for our clients leveraging IoT technologies. We like to say we're technology advantaged as opposed to agnostic, meaning we use any type of network, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, LPWAN, NB-IoT, whatever's out there. We essentially create a solution for our clients, and then we deploy it and we manage it on their behalf. The key that we want to get into, so the device itself, in your case, your tag, is a business that a lot of the ecosystem needs to enable, right? So whether it's a sensor, a tracker, a camera, cameras are excellent sensors, right? Computer vision is here now. We know that because we've seen it on the internet, we've seen it on a lot of different AI models that are being developed around computer vision. It's all over the booths here at MWC. However, it's not really deployed in enterprise type environments. And so we see that as a whole new data source. And to echo what Stephen was saying about Ambient IoT is we're essentially turning the physical into digital, right? We're generating time series data from everything that is in this room. So with Wiliot, every single chair in this room can be tagged. You can know where it is. You don't necessarily need to know the temperature unless you're very sensitive to sitting down. But you can see who's sitting actually from the temperature because you can deduce that. And then that data is something that we are focusing on at PwC. So you know us as an auditor. The way I pitch my role, and by the way, PwC ended up buying my company now that's the product called Signal Graph, which you see here, which is essentially a time series graph engine purpose-built for IoT data. So what we do is we look at how IoT data changes over time, and then we can detect anomalies, we can detect patterns, and then we query the data using a large language model, just like you do ChatGPT. So imagine, a generated AI query language for the physical world, right? For electrons and neurons, and that's really the world that we're working with Steve and the team at Wiliot on, because we see this as another element of creating this new time series physical data that allows us to basically have one visibility. We fuse all kinds of different sensors into having much greater visibility into not only the supply chain, but how an operation is performing. And you get to essentially see things that you wouldn't see otherwise. I'll skip through this. I mean, you probably know of all these types of sensors. The key is how they fuse together. How do you generate visibility into the fact that the door is opening and closing, and the fact that from a Wiliot tag you know that chair has changed its temperature. Those are all things that become part of this. You don't necessarily need a dashboard to look at it all the time. I like to say a lot of this stuff happens through APIs and happens auto-magically. However, if you want to query, how is your supply chain doing? Where should I be focusing my attention? Or trigger alerts based on when things are not doing what they should be doing. This is the platform that we're deploying with our clients to understand. So Just wanted to give you guys a quick intro into PwC, and I'm more interested in hearing what your questions are relative to Steve's great presentation. So thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, and I feel like Patrick and his team within PwC are an amazing resource, and we believe that the impact of ambient IoT is profound. It needs to be thought about, planned for at the board level, at the CXO level, and then obviously with the operational level. So companies like PwC have the ability to get down and dirty and deploy complex networks like they have here, as well as facilitate some of that thinking that allows action to take place. So last segment in the program before Q&A is a word from Anthony on the subject of sustainability and circularity. So this is something that's, I think, important to many of us, and Anthony's an amazing subject matter expert on this.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. My name's Anthony Zeppian. I'm the VP of Climate and Circularity. I'm excited to talk to you today about the global need for climate tech infrastructure. And my career has essentially been in this space and looking for technologies that can truly enable sustainable supply chains. And I think our ambient IoT is exactly that. Now, first slide to hit you with is this one here. May look quite scary, but to me, this is just the truth of what is actually happening out there. Our environment is going through a huge shift, which is going to change the landscape in terms of winners and losers. And this presents actually one of the biggest opportunities of our lifetime, a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity in itself. And that is resulting from the simple fact that human demand, or the demand of ourselves on the planet for all the goods and services, is massively outstripping the planet's capacity to supply us with those services. What I mean by that is nature provides us with a lot of essential things, ecosystem services, oxygen, nutrient cycling, and our demand is massively outstripping that, and that is degrading our capacity. So you see here the green line is in reduction, and the blue line you see on this chart is our humans' actual demand, and we're almost requiring 2 Earths worth of resources, and so we need to close that gap. We are unsustainable, and the WEF actually said that nature supports 50% of GDP. So this is the opportunity to talk about. And the world wants it. Let's be clear, 30% of investment funds focus on sustainability today, and that's massively ballooning. And that is coming from citizens, from customers, from employees who are demanding that. So, despite all this demand, we clearly need to enact action quicker and faster, and so businesses need climate tech infrastructure. And some of the requirements of climate infrastructure, I believe, is essentially it needs to be able to provide real-time feedback, and we know Ambient IoT can deliver that. We need a lot more data. So, not just billions of devices, we need trillions of devices sending back as that environmental information. And then obviously we need the computing power to kind of handle that. And so if Ambient IoT is climate tech infrastructure, then we're going to truly operationalize sustainability. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So Ambient IoT actually allows us to do real-time dynamic asset carbon footprinting. So not at the corporate level, but at the individual product level. What is the footprint of that, and how is that changing real-time dynamic? For example, how bad is an individual banana? And this book here, which I put on the screen, is, and I tells you about how bad a banana is. It goes into many other products. I do highly recommend this book, but this book kind of gives you a snapshot of a banana, or all bananas. It's the average. It's a guess element, and it's well out of the event. But the truth is, not all bananas are the same, and they're not created equally. So with Ambient IoT, you can finally see that's the individual asset or banana story, and get to see its underlying quality. And carbon footprinting is actually a very good way of seeing that story. But to date, carbon footprinting is essentially quite high cost. That's why we are essentially been estimating well after the event of an audit. But with Ambient IoT, we can do it at a low cost and improve the certainty of that calculation. So just for context, this is maybe what you would see a supply chain might look like for a food item or banana. It's a very simplified one. But again, carbon footprinting is actually estimating all of these individual nodes, data points, and then accumulating them to get that footprint number. So using Ambient IoT, in this example I show you, we're using Wiliot pixels. We get a high resolution or definition picture of what is happening. I'm going to show you now a snapshot of that journey and how we got to the individual carbon footprint numbers. And it's from just the distribution center, which is several vehicles and 3 different stores. You can see the individual real-time carbon footprint. And what we get, importantly, is key data from these devices. We know exactly where is the asset, when did the asset exactly get there, and how long was it there for. And importantly, we also get the environmental context, the temperature, humidity, and we can use this also to validate location and what the actual product is experiencing. So we can build greater confidence on that actual number. So let me show you what this looks like. This is 2 weeks worth of data to show the pallets of bananas moving through the supply chain from distribution center to store. You will see here different color boxes with the red color essentially representing how intensive the carbon event was. Essentially like a blue color there, so kind of a lower carbon intensity event. But you can see the top left-hand corner here, if I press play, that's where the distribution center is in the top left-hand side. On the right-hand side of the image, you'll see 3 different stores all accumulating like a tower. This is the accumulation of carbon over that location. In between there, you can see the actual journeys happening and different routes actually seeing different carbon intensity events. So this is sped up, but we can see real-time carbon events happening, and where the hotspots are. So we can actually now start to really drill in and focus our energy on where to act and improve. But this is the fun bit, personally myself, getting deeper into the kind of details, and we can very quickly get a picture of the average carbon footprint of all of those pallets. And basically we can see the average performance of the footprint. Interestingly, the tail is huge, as you can see here. And just 5% of those pallets of bananas is responsible actually for 20% of the overall emissions that we saw. So when we're talking about reducing emissions by 50% by 2030, there's clearly a huge opportunity here in the processes. So Ambient IoT really gives us that high definition picture. We can kind of drill in and see information and insights about certain assets. More importantly, we can see cold stores underperforming or outperforming, for example. Also, our processes, we can see drivers' acceleration actually contributing to more emissions or even congestion, and then also wastage. We can identify that, which also contributes to the carbon footprint number. If I just drill into 2 of those stories, here is 2 pallets of bananas, both 500 hours in that system that we showed you there. Essentially go from distribution center to the store and sold. Completely different carbon footprint number. I didn't have the insight into why there was, but you can quite clearly see there's clearly quite opportunity to kind of reduce that footprint because they're sitting for a long time in a cold store, in a cooler environment. But we can use this data to make smarter interventions. Again, we just show you the natural reaction is like move everything to electrification, electric fleet, or put solar panels. But if you actually did that in this situation, you wouldn't actually reduce the footprint by very much. So we can use this data to make actual smarter interventions to remove carbon. Here, it's obviously the focus and the investment should be around the store operations. But let me just put this into perspective. I only showed you 10% of the overall carbon footprint journey of a banana. just do keep in mind as we kind of build end to end, there's greater opportunity to reduce emissions. That's why I think the potential is huge. And importantly, if we start actually sourcing, for example, food from farms that is doing fantastic climate smart practices, for example, regenerative agriculture, that we can start with a negative number, and then the spending of carbon to the supply chain can be minimized, and we can truly move to a regenerative supply chain. So that's why I'm personally excited for the potential of Ambient IoT. It can help transform supply networks from extractive, which it is today, to truly regenerative. We can select the optimal routes through the supply chain, optimum suppliers and routes that can basically get products to us in the lowest footprint possible. And that gives you a snapshot of the potential of Ambient IoT to be truly climate tech infrastructure. I'm certainly optimistic, and if you have any further questions, please do reach out. I'll be delighted to kind of get into the detail with you. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad we got a chance to share Anthony's remarks with you. We believe there's a high correlation between carbon and cost. So if we can give a daily dashboard to everyone that runs a store, runs a product line, runs logistics on what their carbon footprint is, we can make a lot faster progress to reduce carbon. The reason I'm looking at my phone is to see who won this smart speaker. We do have a Q&A left, but I'm not going to keep you in suspense. Darren Helston, are you here? All right. Congratulations. Here's your smart speaker. Thank you. All right. I've got like one thing to say at the end, but we do have 3 or 4 minutes. So if you have any questions, then now's a good time to fire. Anyone got any questions? Yes.
Will all the data have to go to your cloud, or could the manufacturer or member of the tag or else they would put the data to the database?
Well, I think with standards coming, there'll be many cloud providers in the same way as you have a choice today between AWS and GCP. Then you'll have a choice of Ambient IoT provider. Today, our business model is around the cloud. And so all the data from Wiliot pixels that are made by many, many different companies, that data gets to the applications via the Wiliot cloud. So that's our business model, and that's the root of the data. But come some of these standards with IEEE and 3GPP, I think there'll be healthy competition in the same way as there is competition between the Verizon and the T-Mobiles. There'll be competition. Essentially, we do define a data model. The data model is very simple. We provide events, and the events are generally within the context of GS1. So we use GS1 identifiers for assets, and we provide simple values for temperature and location change. But yeah, what you said is correct. Yes.
Anybody just customize the tags, like hardware-wise, or?
Can you customize the hardware? Yeah, on both ends. So we have different companies making tags. Most of the major tag vendors are producing tags, but each of them has ideas about variations for different kinds of tags. You need a different tag on a COVID vaccine bottle than a cardboard box. We're working with companies like Westrock, one of the largest makers of cardboard boxes, for embedding tags in their corrugate. We are also working with a broad variety of companies on the edge devices. So the software to run on the edge devices that are required to energize and relay the signals from our tags is open sourced on GitHub. So anyone can start building the infrastructure. And today, our data flows through all of the major wireless access point vendors that are either using or we're helping to use the software that helps get to the cloud. So there's really a broad range of devices. There's devices going into refrigerated containers. There's a range of different antenna polarizations and So there's already quite a lot of choice, and I think we're in the early stages. So good question, thank you. So,
What are energy sources and
so we harvest energy from Bluetooth, so any Bluetooth, but also we harvest at 915, and so we've harvested from LoRaWAN, sidewalk radios, from other RFID, legacy RFID infrastructure, and like the Energist devices that you may have seen in some of the videos, they have their own proprietary approach to transmitting at 915. And in the past, we've created custom tags that have harvested energy from FM radio stations and that sort of thing. So one chip, broadly applicable to different energy, RF energy sources. Yes?
Has anyone ever considered renting those devices?
In the human body, they've definitely considered it. We've never done it. The human body has a lot of water in it, and so probably the RF characteristics are not a great match. But I would never say it's impossible. But we tend not to focus on tracking people. There's a whole bunch of technologies that do a really good job of that, and we're focused more on the things. So.
How does this deal with large-scale deployments? Like with Bluetooth, you know, at larger scale, you start getting interference. Is this able to get around it? And at what scale would you start seeing that you no longer can handle that?
Yeah, so the question is about how do you scale, and there's many elements to scaling, but one I think you're focusing on is the RF and channel saturation and that sort of thing. So we've spent a lot of time on that. We're very keenly interested in it. In that video, the TV thing that made me cringe, behind me was a wall of 1,000 of our tags, all broadcasting within a fairly confined space. And I'm still able to use my Bluetooth mouse and earbuds and so forth. So we have scaled tens of thousands of units in a venue, and because the messages are pretty short, then we're in good shape. Our next generation product will also use the alternative channel architecture that's in Bluetooth 5 to go beyond the 3 advertising channels. We're out of time. We're actually over time. I want to thank everyone for coming. We really believe that this can make a huge difference if we can make companies more profitable and save the planet. That's a good thing, but we can't do it on our own. This is about an ecosystem, which is why I'm so glad all of you came, and I hope many of you decide to get involved in scaling the ambient Internet of Things. Thank you very much.